Hello, fellow nerds, geeks, and supporters of indie pop culture creators. Aaron Nabus here, and thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Holiday Show. On this episode, I'll be talking to a former high school teacher turned writer, Gabe Cheng. He currently has a Kickstarter campaign going on until Friday, August 6th, 2021, for the fourth chapter of his comic book, For Molly. You can also get caught up by picking up issues 1 through 3, which is what I did. Molly is an action-packed modern fantasy adventure set among the abandoned things in the New Jersey forest where talking dogs and off-the-grid humans have precariously coexisted. Until now, it tackles themes such as guilt, abandonment, and trust. The two main characters, Greg and Molly, start out hopeless and isolated, but through their experiences in the forest, despite all of the challenges they face, they discover something in each other that's worth fighting for. And I read issues 1 through 3, and that's really evident. And I'm looking forward to issue 4. So, Gabe, welcome to the Holiday Show.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
And we were connected through a mutual friend, Steve Prince of Monster Matador fame. So, Steve, if you're listening to this, thanks for the connect.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Since this is your first time on the show, can you tell us about your origin story? Where did you grow up? And I'm guessing since your comic book takes place in New Jersey, you grew up in New Jersey.
Yeah, I was born in Baltimore, but my family moved around a lot when I was a kid. And so I spent most of my formative years in New Jersey, 6th grade through 12th grade. And yeah, so that was kind of growing up in that setting, growing up in that environment was the inspiration for the setting and the environment in For Molly.
Are there some things that you miss from your hometown because you live in LA now?
Yes. I mean, I don't have anybody back there. Pretty much my entire family has moved out of New Jersey. I have some family in New York, but most of my family is in Southern California now. So I don't get to go back to my hometown very much, but there are a couple of key places, mainly food related, cheesesteak and pizza related, that I definitely miss. One of them is actually going to make an appearance in For Molly Part 4, and it's a little cheesesteak staple in which is near my hometown in Princeton, which is not my hometown, but is that's kind of the place where I tell people I'm from, so they understand kind of the general area. So yeah, I grew up there. I came out here to go to college. After college, I became a high school teacher. I went to grad school, became a high school teacher, but then I decided that career wasn't really for me. The good things about it were kind of becoming harder to hold on to, and the challenges were kind of becoming more and more challenging. And I eventually ended up figuring out that it was because it wasn't really what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So I made that change. Working in entertainment, starting a second career was always my dream. So I'm doing that now, and writing. And focusing on writing, and that became writing comics. And joining the indie comics community, which has been one of the best decisions I've ever made. Getting to meet people like Steve and like yourself, and go on podcasts like this and talk comics, and go to cons and talk comics and things like that. And For Molly is the first comic book that I've ever written, and it's coming to an end. The fourth and final chapter is on Kickstarter right now, so that brings us up to today.
And when did you realize that you were artistic, and what attracted you specifically to writing?
I mean, I've always been attracted to writing ever since I was a little kid. I was writing short stories in notebooks. I was, reading them, having my family sit down and listen to me read them, which I'm sure was very adorable, but the stories were awful. But yeah, I've always done that. And even in high school, I one of the ways that I kind of dealt with the world and kind of understood the people around me. And this was actually more in middle school and high school. I would write. So I had like full novels written in high school that I was just constantly going back and updating and revising and I don't know what they look like now. I mean, I haven't gone back and read them for like 20 years, and I'm sure that they're again adorable but terrible. But yeah, that's always been something that's been part of the way that I kind of process things, the way it's something that has always been enjoyable to me, an outlet that has always been important to me. And so I started when I was a teacher writing screenplays, just sort of as a hobby, writing screenplays, writing pilots to shows, or writing spec scripts for shows, and just kind of sitting on them. And then um, that's how For Molly actually started its life. It was a screenplay that I wrote, intending it to be a movie. But then I I felt like when I was done with that screenplay, I felt like I wasn't done with it, and I didn't have any connections in Hollywood as far as actually making a movie. And it's not something that can be done trivially. It's a story about talking dogs, so there's forests and action sequences, and explosions, and so there'd be a fair amount of CGI if this was to be made into a movie or TV show. So I thought kind of almost flippantly, I was like, I'll just make it into a comic. That should be easy, but it's not. And but in that, fanciful, kind of, a flippant is a little bit too pejorative of a word, but in that sort of like, oh, I guess I'll just do this. Like I said, I made this decision that has been one of the best in my life as far as joining the indie comics community and meeting people in the indie comics community, and becoming going from a person on one side of the table at the convention, walking around talking to people, to the other side of the table and being the one with a book to sell. It's been one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. And it's a form of storytelling that I've really fallen in love with and come to appreciate so much more. And even though For Molly started its life as a screenplay, it really is best told as a comic book. And I adapted it in a way where really the comic book form, the comic book medium is the 100% best way to tell that story. And I'm so happy with the final product, and I'm so proud of everything that my artist Benjamin Sawyer and I have done in order to create that final product.
Mhm. Um, not only what has it been a rewarding experience overall, because I think it's been a long road for you, but I think you also wrote uh, that it was a cathartic experience for you. Would you mind
Yeah.
elaborating on that a little bit?
Yeah, I was going through a pretty difficult moment in my life. I was getting divorced. And as I was talking about, I was reconsidering my career as a high school teacher. You know, I was I was at a school that was what I consider to be one of the best schools in Southern California, and the best position, and I just wasn't happy. Um, and and that's a hard thing to kind of contend with. So dealing with the idea of changing careers, of changing jobs. I applied to grad schools, even though I'd already been to grad school. I would have been a double master's degree type person, and got rejected from both of them. So dealing with that sort of those sort of obstacles, and going through a pretty difficult divorce. The writing of For Molly was a cathartic thing. It was a therapeutic thing. It was something that I poured a lot of my feelings and emotions into in order to have an outlet for it. And when I adapted it into a screenplay, or, I'm sorry, when I adapted it into the comic book from the original screenplay, a lot of that original stuff kind of came out. I was able to filter through a lot of the stuff that was more raw, and kind of turn it into something that is more thematic and has more to do with the characters and the story than it was, about a lot of personal stuff. But it's still, a lot of personal stuff is still in there. It's not specifics about me, not even specifics about the relationship that the main character Greg is coming out of. There's only one mention of his ex-wife in the book, and it's kind of from his perspective, and it's very very brief, and it's in a dream sequence as well. So it it isn't like it isn't too intimate in that way, but it still is getting at what made that moment in my life very challenging, and so and recovering out of that, and learning to and figuring out how to pick up the pieces and keep moving on, especially when there might not be an opportunity for what might be considered in kind of a narrative movie Hollywood comic book kind of way to be quote unquote redemption. It is just a matter of what do you find after something like that, to keep pushing you forward. What is worth fighting for after that.
It's you mentioned the word redemption, and as I was reading issues 1 through 3, that was the word I was thinking about. Um, I mean, the main character, Greg, he may not be going through the same exact experiences as you, but I can tell from the way you wrote him. I have an emotional connection with him after reading issues 1 through 3, and that's something that I was impressed about. And I was also impressed with the pacing of the book. It's like, you know, I was just going through all the issues, and before I knew it, I was already done. So, good job on
Oh,
that.
thank you. Yeah, thank you. That means a lot. I mean, it is writing a comic, and writing your first comic. The challenge is to, what is going to be that last thing on the page. It's going to motivate the person, the reader, to turn the page. And
Hmm.
and so I really appreciate you saying that. I mean, because that's top of mind as I'm writing. Like, okay, in this, what can I fit into this page so that I get to a point where it's like, um, in panel 6 or panel 7, whatever it is, like, oh wow, like I got to turn the page to find out what happened. So I really appreciate you saying that.
And I mean, you've already sort of touched on why creating comic books are important to you. Is there anything else you might want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I wish that I could say that I've been reading comic books my whole life, and I kind of have, but I was really kind of a late bloomer and a Johnny come lately to comics. I didn't really start reading seriously until after college, and I was working at a job where we got iPads for the job, and they were kind of unrestricted in that
Hmm.
way. And so, one of the first things I did was download that DC app that I think is now defunct, and maybe everything has gotten ported over to Comixology, and I just started reading digital comics weekly, and going back into the back catalog, and also buying other trades and things like that. So that was kind of my the reignition of my love affair with comics, and from there I read mainly all the modern Batman stuff, and then have since transitioned to being more of a Image comic and Dark Horse comic person, of finding those cool indie titles, following writers basically. So I'll follow pretty much anything that Jeff Lemire writes.
Yeah.
I'll read, and things like that. So um, and I just really love this medium. I just really do. I mean, the kind of innovation that you can do is almost limitless. There's always a different way of telling a story. The same type of story in one person's hands is going to be different in another person's hands, and maybe a writer writes the same story, it's going to look completely different with two different artists, and it's just like there's just so many things to love about writing to this medium, and I absolutely love it. And kind of going off of that, one of the best things about being in indie comics is working with incredible artists. And so Ben is an incredible artist who worked on For Molly, who I've learned a great deal from. He was my first artist, so I've learned a great deal from the kind of things that he does when he is interpreting my script, and the changes that he makes, and the improvements that he makes, and figuring out his strengths, and then trying to write to his strengths. And my other artist that I've connected with for comics, whose name is Elisa Meneghel, who's just absolutely fantastic. And it's just been like, I'm so lucky that like I've just had such a joyous experience working with these two artists that are that I'm so grateful for that.
How did you find them?
Upwork, the freelancer website.
Okay.
So I posted a job on there saying, "Hey, I need a comic creator," and they applied, and I looked through their materials, and I had a phone interview with both of them, and just had a great experience working with them. So neither of them, I live in Los Angeles. Neither of them live in Los Angeles. Neither of them even live in this time zone. Ben lives in St. Louis, Missouri, and Elisa lives in Florence, Italy. So it's I'm an international creator.
That's so awesome. Um, Now, for anyone new to the Formali universe, what would be your pitch to encourage, them to check it out?
Well, it is a modern fantasy comic. I think you kind of covered it in the intro. It's a modern fantasy comic. It has feral packs of talking dogs that are in conflict with off the grid humans. Living in a cult, essentially, the humans, and there's a precarious balance between these two. There's a kind of powder keg that is potentially about to go off. Well, spoiler alerts, it is going to go off in chapter 4. That these two main characters, Greg and Molly, are kind of rushing into that get caught up in the whirlwind of. And you know the characters of Molly is based on a real dog, one that I lost custody of in my divorce. But the kind of voice of Molly is based on a former student that I had, because I was, as you mentioned at the top of the show, as I've also mentioned a couple of times, I was a high school teacher, I was a high school coach, and I had a student who I had a particularly good relationship with, mentor student relationship with, who was the captain of the track team when I was coaching track. But when I first met her as a sophomore in high school, she was pretty rough around the edges. She was pretty, she had a lot of boundaries up. She had a lot of, she kept people at a distance. And the trust that I earned with her over time through being in class with her and being on the track team or coaching the track team with her, it was hard fought, but it was extremely rewarding. And so Molly is her voice is kind of based on that former student that I have. And that's hopefully one of the appealing things about the book. Is it's about this relationship between these two characters that do start out in a really difficult place in their lives. Molly thinks that she needs to be alone. She thinks that she's better off alone. She doesn't like being around other people or other dogs, but she is reluctantly agrees to help Greg, which is explained in issue 1. And Greg is, as we've talked about, coming off of this divorce. He thinks he also needs to be alone, and they are put into this situation together where they form this bond that I feel like a lot of people can probably identify with and can probably understand and probably relate to. And it's also the added part of it is it's a bond that is informed by really the real bonds that can only come from a human and a dog. So it's a little bit different because the dog is able to talk, but I think that people that have relationships with their dog and maybe had to earn their dog's trust a little bit. A lot of rescues are kind of difficult when you first meet them, and they have their own psychological problems and behavioral problems and things like that. And I think that that relationship between Greg and Molly is something that I hope that people are able to identify with and relate to in the book.
And I'm curious, does your former student know that Molly was modeled after her?
Yes. I've told her a couple of times. She's in college now and has more important, things to think about. But I do keep in touch with her, and yeah, she's aware.
Cool. That's awesome. Um, Now, would you mind telling us more about the other characters in For Molly?
Sure. I mean, the two other characters that are probably the most prevalent are these two characters named Schneider and Caprica. and they are advocates, quote unquote advocates in the New Jersey forest. They're charged with keeping the peace between the talking dogs and the humans that are living off the grid, and so they investigate things that are going wrong, crimes, or people harassing each other, or people are assaulting each other, or things like that. They try to solve disputes, so they kind of act as arbitrators or mediators and things like that, and they hand out punishments, and so they come into the story of For Molly at a key moment when Molly and Greg get separated, because they are also separated, and that happens in chapter 2 and chapter 3 of For Molly. But these characters and their story really, I really like fell in love with them in particular when I was writing the book, and their look, and I had this whole backstory set up in my head for them. Like Schneider, who is the human character, he was a lawyer in the city that maybe had some military background, but was really not happy with his life. One day ends up going into the New Jersey forest, to because he discovers this hidden society that is out there. He almost dies in a snowstorm, and then he's rescued by this border collie named Caprica, and they become companions and they become advocates. And she kind of brings him into the world of being an advocate. She's the mentor she's the old veteran cop to the rookie cop of the relationship. And so I had this whole backstory for them and for the advocates and for the things that they do, and almost none of it came through in For Molly. And so I was kind of bummed about that, but I didn't really do anything right away. But then I was suddenly struck with the inspiration to give them their own spinoff. So the end of last year, I wrote the story. At the beginning of this year, I did the Kickstarter for it. It's called Into the Wilderness. I did it with that artist I mentioned before, Lisa Menegel. It's a little 13-page short story that actually takes place before the events of For Molly, and is about Schneider and Caprica. And it was my way of expanding the world of For Molly, the hidden society in the New Jersey forest, but also exploring these two characters that I really fell in love with, and their unique relationship. As I said, like their dog is the quote unquote older, more veteran character, the mentor character, and the human character, the human man character is the one that's still learning the ropes and is still kind of making mistakes and leaping before he looks. And so that's a really cool action adventure story that was one of the things that I wrote during the pandemic and had created during the pandemic, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of the pandemic, I mean, looks like you've been able to stay creative during the pandemic. What were some of the keys to that for you to find that success during the pandemic?
I mean, like I said, I've always loved writing. It's always been an outlet for me. So, so many people during the pandemic and during the lockdown, and I was fortunate enough to be able to work from home during the lockdown. And so many people said, like, if like now that you have this opportunity, what are you going to do with it? And lucky for me, I'd already kind of determined what that was. So it was always like, there was never a question about it, really, is what I'm trying to say, is that like I have this opportunity to do something. What am I going to do? Well, I should write. And I ended up writing short stories, 6 short story one-shot comics. One of them is Into the Wilderness that that relates back to For Molly, but the other ones are independent of For Molly. And I did a Kickstarter for another one called Love at First Bite, which is a romantic comedy with vampires, which is kind of my take on dating in LA. And and I really like. I was really trying to capture the moment, capture a lot of the things that I was feeling, a lot of things that I was experiencing. So I wrote a story about, well, all the stories actually are about feeling stuck in maybe a job that you don't like, feeling stuck in a situation where you don't feel like you're reaching your full potential. feeling like you're trapped somewhere. Like these are all feelings that I kind of was trying to explore in different ways, because that's what we were all dealing with. We were all stuck at home. We were all maybe stuck in our jobs because we were trying to move on with our career, but then suddenly this comes around, and there's a hiring freeze, or there's a payroll freeze or something like that, or we're laid off or we're fired or things like that. And it's just, there's just this prevalent feeling of feeling stuck. And I was trying to capture that in different ways in my short stories. So the story that I'm coming out with, the next comic I'm actually working on right now with Elisa is, I'm not going to give too much away, but I'll say that it's a parallel universe story. And it's a story about somebody who was dissatisfied with who he was and where he was in his own parallel universe, and then goes and finds a parallel universe that is better, that is easier, that he can have everything that he always wanted, but he doesn't belong there. And so dealing with the consequences uh, of going someplace that you don't belong is it all stems from feeling stuck during the pandemic. So that's an example of kind of how I tried to channel what I was feeling into my writing.
Gotcha. Um, are there any details about the Kickstarter that you'd like to highlight?
The Formali Kickstarter?
Yes.
Yes, of course. Why would I think that? I'm sorry. Uh, the Yeah, I've just been really lucky to work with a lot of great artists. So the main thing that I'm kind of putting forward is all the art. So there are stickers that are done by my sister, Izzy, who is an incredible artist. Her Instagram is at Izzy Cheng Art. There's postcards and prints from Ben Sawyer. Also, people can buy a custom pet portrait from Ben Sawyer, which that I've done that in past Kickstarters, and they all just look really incredible. He's an incredible artist, so that's one of the tiers. Also, there's two really cool variant covers. One of them is done by an artist named Kathleen Abalos. It's really cool painterly style, and it actually is, the setting is a place, a real place in the New Jersey forest in Princeton, nearby where I grew up. So that was exciting to finally get into a cover for the book. And also the final variant cover, the third variant cover, or second variant cover, third cover, is done by Emma Kubert, who is is a really incredible, phenomenal artist who has worked for DC and is doing her own image book right now. She's a third generation comic book creator and artist, and she did an incredible Molly and Greg cover for Chapter 4 that I'm very, very excited about. And also, Elisa Menegel, my other artist, is doing custom variant covers. It's the highest tier of the campaign, but it's really, really worth it because she's an incredible artist. So people that buy into that tier will get their own custom variant cover made specifically for them, with them on the cover, with art by Elisa Menegel. So it's like a custom portrait, but they'll be dropped into the Formali cover, and then I will get that cover printed onto an actual copy of Formali Part 4. So not only will you have it physically, but you'll have it physically with a one-of-a-kind Kickstarter exclusive cover with yourself on it. So I'm excited about that one.
Mm-hmm. Now I'm curious. Now that you're on issue 4, how has the sort of process of learning Kickstarter gone for you?
It's been interesting. It's very, very difficult. But it is in my opinion, it's the best way for me to be going about doing this. And I have connected with a lot of really great people that have been extremely helpful. And that's one of the things that I love about the Kickstarter community, is how open people are to giving advice, to connecting and talking about things, and to help each other out. It's just such a great network of creators on Kickstarter. It's specifically in the comic creators kind of little pool. And and it's just been great connecting with. I've gotten so many great responses from people that have bought the book and the people that have read it and have shared it with friends, and I'll get tweets or direct messages or emails or whatever from people that said like, hey, like I had a friend that contributed to the Kickstarter and they sent me the book and I really loved it and I bought it, all of it on Comixology, and I can't wait to see it to cons or whatever. And it's just like it's just it's being interacting with the other people on there is such a positive experience. It definitely outweighs the difficulties of setting it up, creating the graphics, creating the video, and doing all those things, all those things that go into the hard work of it. It's just such a great community to be a part of, and I'm so lucky and I'm so grateful that I have had the success that I've had on there.
As we're recording this, it's the week that San Diego Comic-Con was supposed to take place.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Are you planning to attend any in-person comic conventions anytime soon? And I mean, to promote your new book and other work. And if so, on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the highest level of concern, how concerned are you about attending public events amid the pandemic?
Um, I'm not planning on attending any Comic Cons right now. That's not so much because of my concern about public events. It's more because I'm starting a new job. It's taking up a lot of my focus. I have other things going on in my life, and so I wanted to put a lot of effort into the Kickstarter and doing that specifically as best I can without being pulled in a million different directions. So I'm just trying to focus on doing the Kickstarters as much as possible. So for that reason, I kind of have delayed going back to the cons. I would say as far as concern, I'm at about a 6 or 7 out of 10. I am concerned. I do want everybody to be safe. I would hate to be at the con that ended up being a super spreader event and to have contributed to it in some sort of way. And I just know that there's a lot of moving parts out there, that there's a lot of things going on with the convention centers and the organizers and a lot of decisions that need to be made. And so I'm just like letting people sort it out, letting smarter people than me, or maybe just braver people than me, kind of sort that all out, and then I will jump back in when there's a little bit more of a like this is a little bit more of a protocol, I guess would say, where it's like, okay, this is how we're going to be safe. So I'm still on the waiting it out kind of train. So what about you? Are you planning to go back soon?
Um, well, I attended an event, but it was an outdoor event, so
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel I felt relatively safe. In close quarters, I did wear my mask, but other than that, it was pretty much uh, a pretty cool event. It was maybe 1,000 or maybe 1,500 people, so
Oh, that's great.
yeah, it wasn't too big. But then again, just seeing all that people there was definitely an experience. But
Yeah.
San Diego Comic Con has an event in later in the fall. It's a 3 day event, so that'll probably be my first convention that I'll be going to, and I think I mean barring the Delta variant or whatever variant that comes out, I guess I'll just be monitoring the situation.
Yeah.
But as it stands now, like if it were to happen, this weekend, then I think I kind of feel relatively safe about everything. But obviously, when I'm indoors, I'll still be wearing a mask. I still wear a mask when I go to the gym.
Me
So
too. Yeah. I mean, I do miss that. I do miss the community. I
yeah,
do miss seeing other creators, talking to other creators, seeing their work and how it's laid out on their tables, and talking to people, that, and trying to get them interested in the book and introducing myself and the book and stuff like that. I mean, I do miss that part of it. But but yeah, like I said, I'm hoping that I feel like I would feel comfortable at an outdoor event. So I think that when I'm ready to come back, that will probably be, I'll probably try to find something like that, like what you were describing,
right,
to be
right,
my first jump back into the con circuit.
definitely. What's a typical day like for you? I know I guess you'll be starting a new job, but how do you balance your creative projects and your personal life in general?
Um, right now, because I have the Kickstarter going, I work from 9:30 to 6:30. My commute is about half an hour to 45 minutes. I come home, I pretty much just work on Kickstarter stuff until about midnight, and then pass out and then get up and do it again. Um, and but this is kind of a crazier time because the Kickstarter is going on right now. But I do try to carve out a little bit of time every day to doing creative stuff, even though I work full time. I have a little enamel pin that I really like. I found at WonderCon 2019, or the last one that I went to, that says "Write every day." And so having just that at the top of mind, where I spend at least a little bit of time trying to do something creative, trying to do something where I'm writing something down, even if it's just prep for my podcast, where I do a Futurama fan podcast. It's coming to an end very soon, but even if it's just 25 minutes, 10 minutes writing something down for my podcast, writing down an idea, doing some prep, thinking about story analysis, then I try to do that at least once a day. And it's the same thing with writing comics. And I'm a pretty slow writer. Like, honestly, like I'm a very slow writer, actually. And so even if I can get one idea down, one line of dialogue down a day, just chipping away at it. Just the only way to eat a Buick is to ground it up and eat it one bite at a time. So just doing that, just like one thing every day, and then eventually you find the time, you schedule a time to spend a couple of hours on it, or spend a whole day on it, and then just try to take all those pieces and put it together, and come up with the story, or come up with the plan for the podcast prep. And yeah, it's just um it's just something that I love doing. It doesn't feel like work. It doesn't feel like um it doesn't it feels so natural to me. It feels like, whatever circumstances I find myself in, whether it's working long hours, whether it's I don't know, down the road, I feel like whatever I do, wherever I end up, whatever's going on in the daytime or the nighttime, or whatever on the weekends, like, I'm going to find a way to write, because I love it, because and it's always been a part of me. And for a long time, right out of college, and during the time that I was teaching, I was kind of denying that part of myself, saying like, oh, that's capricious youth. That's something that just I thought about doing but didn't end up doing, and then and pushing that down, but eventually it kind of sprung up again. So I feel like no matter what happens to me, no matter what I do, even if I can only commit like 10 minutes a week to it, it's going to be something that I am always doing. And because I just, like I said, I love it so much. And now that I've discovered comics in the last 5 years, as a way to get out what I want to say, and then work with some awesome artists to put it into, to make it even better, to make it visual. um I don't see myself stopping. So yeah.
That's good to hear. Can you give us some insight on how you generally come up with your ideas for stories? Do you have a process for brainstorming initial concepts? How do you keep track of everything? What's your research process like?
Yeah, I mean, oddly enough, doing doing a podcast where I was talking about every episode of Futurama, and breaking down the story of that, and kind of analyzing it and looking at the component parts, it really prepared me for writing. It seems obvious now saying it, but it didn't seem like I didn't start out that podcast thinking that that's what it would be. But I spent all this time talking about kind of short form storytelling, with really strong characters, with really good circular stories. that have really good themes that are dealing with some fun sci-fi concepts, and that prepared me to write these short stories that I've been writing in the last year or so. So that was definitely part of it. I was drawing from that experience. I will start off with the kind of the kernel of an idea, something that just sounds cool in my head, something that I feel like I am excited about telling that story. So, you know, vampires and dating in Los Angeles, and and I'll start to turn, which is what Love at First Bite ended up being. And so I'll start to turn that over my head, and I'll do some research about what has been done with vampires. I'm a big fan of What We Do in the Shadows, so I was trying to kind of draw on that, on the popularity of that a little bit, and at the same time as I was watching it, I was trying to avoid doing a lot of the things that they were doing in there, and specifically with Love at First Bite, I had a fun time researching that because I went back to Dracula and read some cliff notes and some I looked at like some kid, some high school kid, like put their Quizlet or their whatever presentation online, like breaking it down, and I'm like looking through it like intently, like, oh, this is so interesting. Like some 10th grader wrote it. I'm like, wow, this is really helpful. Thanks. But it's all about, in a nutshell, the Dracula is all about like the Victorian era version of toxic masculinity, and you know, the idea of a vampire being a parasite, and being somebody that kind of like is, you know, is a bad man, you know, is somebody who is essentially, you know, sexually assaulting people. So taking that idea, not the sexual assault part of it, because that's very serious, but taking the idea of toxic masculinity, of something that should be villainized, should be looked down upon, and turning that into a parody character, a parody vampire, and that's kind of where that story grew out of. So this character, the main character, is dealing with their breakup in not the best way, and tries to get revenge on their ex by becoming a vampire and rubbing their face in it, and learns a little bit of a story about you know what it takes to kind of grow from a bad experience, whereas the evil vampire in the story is kind of the dark mirror of that, the dark reflection of what can happen if you let your obsession and your want for revenge and the things, that all the terrible things that you feel after a break, to really just take over your life and to turn toxic, essentially, and to turn you into a toxic male. So that's where that story came from, and trying to reinterpret it in that way. And yeah, and so I don't know if I answered your original question or if I'm just rambling now.
That's all good.
But yeah, I mean, that I try to look at the story circle, but at the same time, I try not to be kind of tied to that just exclusively. I try to break outside of that, but I do generally use the the book is called The Writer's Journey by Christopher Vogler, as a structure for how I want to tell stories. But then if I feel myself doing something that is a little bit too formulaic, a little bit too cliche, I'll try to just blow it up in my head and be like, okay, what is, what is the way that has not been told before about from getting A to B? You know, what does that journey look like in a way that is different from anything that I've ever seen or read before? And that's the challenge. That's the fun part of it.
Nice. I guess we'll take a break and do a thunder round, which is our round of random questions. You mentioned the Futurama earlier. I'm curious. One, how many episodes of Futurama were there? And if you were a character on there, what kind of character would you be?
Oh, that's a good question. So the number of episodes is kind of is I never had the concrete number in my head. I think it's 147 technically, but it you need to take into account, when you think about it, that there were 4 directed DVD movies made, and those DVD movies were split up into 4 episodes each. So some consider those episodes. So 16 episodes. Some consider them 4 movies, and some disregard them completely when thinking about the episodes. But the number is about 147. We did 150 podcasts, or we were up to 150 when we finished, and now we're continuing with some other Futurama content. Man, that's a really good episode. Good question about what kind of character would I be. I don't think that I would want to be a head in a jar because I like the being ambulatory.
I guess first you'd have
But
to be a president, though, right? Or are all of them
you,
presidents?
somebody of note,
Ah,
certainly, like Hank Aaron
okay,
was a voiceover, or was a guest appearance. Lucy Liu, Conan O'Brien, people like that,
okay.
um, and I think that man, this is a good question. There's my instinct is to say I would want to be a robot, because I think that there's so many fun things about and fun mysteries about being a robot. But if I had to nail it down to one of the best things about Futurama, as far as comedy, as far as storytelling, is Bender's compartment. So Bender, the main robot character in the story, his torso has a little door on it, and for a lot of different reasons, he will open the door, reach in, and grab something. And this is called a hammer space, in comics, or sorry, in animation, where this void inside of Bender is seemingly infinite. He can pull anything out of it at any time, regardless of size or whether it's organic or inorganic material. So that hammer space, that ability to have anything that you want kind of at your fingertips as part of your body, is such a great thing to practically have, but also for comedic purposes. Like, you can just pull out anything from there. There's a great moment where he sees this opportunity in a palace to steal a bunch of stuff, and he says, "Oh, I gotta make some room." And then he opens his compartment and pulls out four goldfish bowls. Like, why does he have those 3 things in there, or 4 things in there? So endless opportunities for stealing stuff and storing stuff, which is what he does, and also endless opportunities for comedy.
Yeah, I mean that show, like The Simpsons, was so silly and irreverent. It was so funny.
Yeah, and it's combined with the real emotional and really kind of real and authentic things, which what makes shows like The Simpsons and Futurama, and nowadays like BoJack Horseman, like that combination of real emotion and abject silliness is such a fun, perfect storm.
um, I mean, we know that Futurama definitely had a big influence on you, but what kind of books, TV shows, and movies were you into as a teenager?
Uh, One name, Stephen King. I read like 17 or 19 Stephen King novels when I was a teenager.
Wow.
Um, Somehow, though, because I'm a big fraidy cat, avoiding most of the major horror titles. So I have read like Gerald's Game and like The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon, and a couple of his other like lesser known ones like Dreamcatcher, Hearts in Atlantis, but I've never read Cujo, It, Pet Cemetery, like the big ones that he's
Right.
known for.
Yeah.
Um, I have read Carrie and The Shining, and The Shining is like, I tell people like, I was 17 years old, and I like lost sleep because of the book The Shining. It is that terrifying. It is a terrifying but experience, but it is a book that I could not put down. It is a book that I like read like 200 pages a night. And actually I revisited Stephen King a little bit during the pandemic, and I read 11/22/63, which is like now one of my top 5 Stephen King novels. I really, really loved it. And the night that I finished it, I think I read like 400 pages of it, to finish it, and stayed up to like 4 a.m. because I just loved it so much.
Wow. Now, how old were you when you first started reading Stephen King books?
Oh man. I'm trying to think of which was my first. I want to say that Hearts in Atlantis was the first. So I would say I was 13 or 14. I remember picking it up in a grocery store. and just seeing like the peace sign and seeing that it took place in the 60s. So I was kind of interested in that. Um, and then I was probably for like, it wasn't long after that that I first read The Gunslinger. And that's a book, the book that I probably read the most. I've reread that book a couple of times. And so I'm a big Dark Tower series fan. And I read all those in high school as well. So yeah, those were my entry drugs or gateway drugs into Stephen King.
Now, does the movie The Shining hold up to the book?
I like to say that there are two types of people in this world: the people that read the book The Shining first and then saw the movie, and then people that watched the movie first and then read the book. I think that it really depends which you saw first and which you like more. I think that I'm not personally a huge Stanley Kubrick fan, but I recognize how important he is to cinema history, how incredibly auteuristic he was. I don't know if that's a word, but he's an auteur director, and so had creative control over practically everything you see and hear in the movie, and that. So I understand and I respect the movie, but I remember watching that movie the first time after reading the book and just being confused and not being scared, because I was like, going down the first big hill of a roller coaster type scared, like terrified, reading the book. So watching the movie, I was like, oh, I don't like, this isn't anything like the book, but I understand that people are terrified and do love that movie.
My next question is, what's something that you hated as a kid, but you love now as an adult?
Ooh, salad. That's one. Vegetables, definitely. That's a really good question. Oh, I know. When I was in my later elementary school, I think that I was really, really not attracted or averse to The Simpsons. That I saw like maybe some promos on TV, and I thought it was kind of crude, in the drawing and also in the content. And my parents were against us watching it. They were probably caught up in the anti Fox, anti Simpsons, and anti Married with Children fervor of the time,
Right.
and so I remember being discouraged to watch The Simpsons and seeing it and being like, oh, this doesn't appeal to me at all, and so that is something that I specifically remember. And then I don't know necessarily where it started, but where it has ended up is that The Simpsons is my favorite television show of all time. That it is something that is a shared language between me and my best friend. It's something that I will walk around in my daily life, and I will start chuckling to myself, and my girlfriend will look at me and say, "You're thinking about something in The Simpsons, aren't you?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I will put Simpsons memes into Slack channels at work, and now, well, I have Microsoft Teams channels at work, and it is such an important part of my life. It's kind of strange to think about how when I originally first encountered it, I didn't want to have anything to do with it.
Yeah, funny enough, I came across a video of the guy who voices Homer Simpson on the Conan show a while back.
Yes.
So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, Dan Castellaneta. He's
Yeah.
also the voice of the robot devil in Futurama.
Uh-huh.
So so I'm a big fan of his, and yeah, I mean, I just love that show, and the way that like people walk around with pop songs in their head, that the lyrics kind of imprinted in their brains, and have a huge music library of their favorite musician or band that they were listening to when in their formative years when they were in middle school and high school. That's how I am with The Simpsons, where watching The Simpsons to me is a lot like karaoke, where I know all the lines of all my favorite episodes almost by heart. And and that's that's how much of a diehard Simpsons fan I am.
What's your favorite karaoke song to sing?
Oh, the Guardians of the Galaxy movie kind of made this a little bit overdone, but definitely Hooked on a Feeling is a
Oh
good
yeah,
one.
that's a good one.
And also because I was speaking of being swept up into things, I was definitely swept up into the Batman Forever fervor that hit when that movie came out. So Kiss from a Rose is another karaoke go-to.
Nice.
So who doesn't love that image of Seal with his shirt flapping in the wind in front of the bat signal? Like, come on, like that's classic movie music video crossover kind of stuff.
I think the Smashing Pumpkins were on that soundtrack too, right?
I think so. I didn't have the soundtrack, but I had the movie on VHS, and so I think you're right about that. So they might be
Actually,
like the song.
I think it might be another movie because I just looked it up and I don't see them on the soundtrack listing.
Okay, maybe it's Batman and Robin because I
Maybe.
feel
Yeah,
like
yeah,
there's a Smashing Pumpkins song in the end credit
yeah, yeah,
sequence,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I might be wrong about that.
But anyways, um, you're at a comic book shop and thumbing through the back issue bins. What kind of comic books would you be looking for?
Um, if I'm at a shop, I will be looking for maybe something from the big two. Maybe a Batman comic that I read digitally that I want to possess physically. Same for the Green Arrow or Daredevil, who are my other favorite characters. Um,
I did see your Daredevil cosplay.
yes, thank you. Very proud of that. It's more cash play. It wasn't too intensive as far as putting it together. But I'm glad that I found some material that I was able to see through and put over my head instead of just running into things all night. Um, yeah. So something like that, or just cool indie stuff. I haven't been reading as much because I have been God, it sounds so pretentious to say this, but like I haven't been reading as much because I've been writing, but but I have been doing a lot of writing, and now that I've kind of accomplished all the writing things that I've wanted to do, I definitely need to dive back into reading more indie comics and reading more Image and Dark Horse and even some of the smaller ones like Scout and Source Point and things like that, and fan based press. So I need to jump back into reading. So as I'm thumbing through or looking through or visiting an LCS, that's what I'm looking for, because I need to I need to see what other people are doing and have that be have that inspire me to continue to do what I'm doing.
Yeah, I'm sort of in the same boat because I've been freelancing as a graphic designer during the
Mm-hmm.
pandemic, so that and also podcasting and other projects. So my my Kickstarter pile has been piling up, and I need to start getting caught up on it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that I have a few coming in the next couple of weeks, but I just got sent Monster Matador by Steve
Right,
Prince.
right,
So
yeah.
I'm very excited that he has finished that Tango the Matador series, and then my friend Jordan Thomas, the number one issue for his new book Weird Work came in, which I really really enjoyed. It's really crazy kooky art, but it's a hard boiled detective story. So and I expressed this to him that anytime he writes a hard boiled detective story, gangster story, I'm 100% in. So I'm very excited with what I have coming from my Kickstarter contributions.
You mentioned parallel universe since you are working on a new project that deals with that. What do you think Gabe Cheng in another universe is doing right now? I'm sure there's probably another version of you that's still a high school teacher, but what are some other possibilities?
This is something that my brother and I talked about when we were talking about the Farnsworth Paradox, which is an episode of Futurama that deals with parallel universes. There is a parallel universe of me where I decided to try to do college football. Where in my actual life, the version of Gabe in this universe that you're speaking to right now, I decided to not pursue doing college football. But there is a version of me that maybe tried to find a community college and join that team, and then maybe transfer to somewhere. And I don't know what that version of me is doing right now, because I probably wouldn't have ended up in Southern California right away. I might have ended up in Southern California sooner, and making that commitment to playing a sport in football, and I imagine that I might be still involved with the sport in some way. I did coach football for a year as a high school teacher. I coached JV football. Was one of the most fun experiences I had in that 7 years of teaching that I did. So there's probably a part of me that did that in college, that maybe jumped into coaching a little bit earlier, maybe jumped into teaching, and is maybe, as you said, still teaching. But I always wonder about that. That's the main decision that I made in my life, where I'm like, what if my life would be so different? I wouldn't have met any of the people that I know right now. I probably wouldn't have lived in all the places that I've lived since high school. My life would be so different if I decided, like, I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna try to play college football.
And what position did you play?
I was a right tackle on the offensive line. I didn't quite have a nose for the ball to play defense, but I was good at protecting and good at understanding run blocking formations and good at communicating with people around me. So I was an okay player. That's why I said, like, probably would have ended up at a community college somewhere in California. I wasn't going to Alabama, or something like that. But so it would have been a very different journey for me.
If a movie was made about your life, what kind of music would be on the soundtrack?
It would be punk rock covers of classic rock.
Oh, interesting.
Which is the main thing. It's not the main thing, but it is something that I am frequently adding to my Pandora playlists. So, like, Me First and the Gimme Gimmes is the obvious one, and then Weezer did a whole album of covers and things like that, and there's a couple other key ones. But yeah, that's a thing that definitely motivates me in my workouts, and would definitely be on the soundtrack of my life.
I'm trying to remember. I think there was a Prince song that had like a punk version to it. I'm trying to recall which one it was, but anyways,
I mean, there's so many out there. There's so many good ones that I'm forgetting as well. There's one that I really like, and I think it was made for a movie, but I might be wrong. But it's it's a band called, I think it's called I Fight Dragons, and I apologize if I'm wrong about this, but they did a cover of The Power of Love, the song from Huey Lewis and the News from Back to the Future, which is just it's a really great song to be on a treadmill running to. Let's just put it that way.
Nice.
Really, really uplifting.
Okay, I think the band's name was called Age of Chance, and they covered Prince's Kiss.
Yeah. I don't think I've heard that one, but it appeals to me.
What's something that your fans would be surprised to know about you?
I think that if you've only read Formali, that people might be surprised that I really want to write more comedies. I really want to write more humorous stories. Formali is a very heavy story. It's a very emotional book, and it has some humor in it. It has some, Molly is a very sarcastic, kind of snarky character, and she gets a lot of really good quips in, and things like that. And but I think that my real where I want to go with my career, as far as being an indie comics writer, is more on the humor side of it. And it took writing for Molly and telling that story, that dramatic story, to kind of find that out, because it is, like we've been talking about, it's my first book. I learned a lot of things. I made a lot of mistakes. Not that, that writing a serious book was a mistake, but I definitely learned a lot about myself and what I want to do and how I want to write. And so a lot of the short stories that I wrote during the pandemic are a little bit more lighthearted, a little bit more jovial. I was laboring over jokes, and I was pitching jokes to my friends and saying, is this funny? Is this not funny? How can I make this better? And so that's kind of, if you've only ever read Formali, and I'm about to come out with a parallel universe story that's humorous, then you'll be like, wow, this is a crazy departure from this very serious meditation on abandonment and loss and guilt, but that is something that I'm passionate about and want to be kind of moving into. If you listen to my podcast, which is about a very silly and absurd show that takes place in the 31st century, then that probably wouldn't surprise you that I love comedy and want to write it. But
Right.
but that might be something. That might be something if you've only ever experienced Formali.
Mhm. As a pizza enthusiast, what are some of your favorite kinds of pizza?
New York style. First of all, that's kind of what I grew up around. So I have family in New York City, like I said. So there are a couple places that I will go and visit when I visit them. I call them pizza walkabouts. Well, I will just I'll leave in the morning and then walk around the city all day, going to different pizza places at different times.
That sounds like fun.
It is, and it's important to get that walk in because it's a lot of calories.
Right.
Yeah. So, but my main go to is the New York style. Is the ricotta on there, the clumps of the cheese on there, as opposed to just the regular mozzarella on there, and lots of vegetables. I do tend to shy away a little bit from the greasier meats, even though I do love them. But it doesn't. I'm getting older, and I'm starting to feel the effects of eating a meat lover's pizza is akin to having a 25-pound kettlebell in my stomach at this point. So I'm trying to I try to avoid those a little bit more than I used to when I was younger.
Yeah, I definitely feel you, because when I was younger, I didn't care to have all those toppings, especially on a meat lover pizza. But now that I'm older, I do love the simpler type of pizzas. Even just one or two toppings. I'm more. I find more satisfaction from those type of pizzas.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I used to love bacon on pizza, but then as I ate it, I haven't eaten in a long time, because the last time I had it, it was it just tasted like bacon. It didn't taste like pizza. It was the flavor was just so overpowering. It just didn't bring anything to the pizza. It just was bacon. So I'm a little bit more judicious with my toppings than I used to be.
Right. Have you met David Pepose?
Yes. Yeah. I haven't seen him since the cons kind of shut down since
Right.
the lockdown. But yeah.
Yeah, his favorite pizza is just a regular cheese pizza.
I mean, you can't go wrong with the margarita pizza, and that's a good way to. And this is something that my girlfriend and I have talked about. That's a good way to judge if a restaurant is even good at pizza, because if you can't get a margarita pizza right, then you're definitely not going to get the anchovies and the mushrooms and the whatever other stuff you're going to put on there. So
yeah.
you gotta nail that first one out of the gate.
Exactly. It's funny you mention that, because such a simple pizza, it does have a chance to not be executed correctly. And I'm reminded of, I think I was watching some sort of chef show or chef video where they, one of their tests when they hire new cooks or new chefs is cook a scrambled egg or cook an omelet or something like that. And if they can't even do that, then they have no chance of being hired.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and I can't cook an omelet, so I would not pass that test.
Do you make your own pizzas?
I have in the past. It's very difficult to do in small apartments in Los Angeles in the summer because it's so hot. But I have in the past. I have made my own crust. I bought my own crust before, and my parents do a a pizza making party every year around December. So that's where I've done it. And unfortunately, they had to cancel theirs last year because of the pandemic. But hopefully, we'll get back to that this year. And I'm trying to convince her. I don't have space in my apartment for like a good pizza oven, so I'm trying to convince her to get one and put it and install it in her house. So yeah, I have done it in the past, but like a lot of things, sometimes it's better in the hands of an expert,
Right. Do you have a daily routine to help you get into the right mindset to create?
Um, Going for walks definitely helped during the pandemic.
Oh,
Getting
I'm
out
with you. I'm
and
with you there, man.
yeah, getting fresh air, getting some exercise, and not looking at a screen. Definitely, the opposite to your question of what is the way to suck all the creativity out of your brain is for me to just spend an hour on Reddit, which I get a lot of enjoyment out of. But like, if I'm trying to work on something and then suddenly find myself picking up my phone and looking at Reddit or Instagram, I'm like, well, this is not productive. This is not productive time. It's fun, but it's not productive time.
Right.
So yeah, getting some blood circulating, getting away from a screen, getting some fresh air. That's definitely how I like to get things started. And yeah, and looking at other books and reading other books is something that, like I said, I need to get back into, because finding inspiration from what other people are doing, what other people who are at the top of their game are doing, is key to creative work.
What's one thing on your bucket list that you've already accomplished, and what's one thing that's still unchecked?
Oh man, still unchecked. I mean, hopefully, we'll see how the next weeks goes, and then the next couple of months. But still unchecked is writing a book. So for Molly will be a big hallmark, big benchmark, or whatever, big accomplishment for me. That's something that is very important. So like I said, we'll see how the next 2 weeks go as far as the Kickstarter, and then from there, we're about halfway through the pages of chapter 4, Ben and I. So we'll be ready to publish in, if all goes well, ready to publish in November. So that's a big thing for me. Thing that I haven't done yet, attending a Super Bowl. That's kind of a stupid one. But yeah, attending a Super Bowl is on my bucket list, even though I know that like it's impossible to get tickets unless you're very well connected or very, very rich. But that's kind of up there for me.
What two teams do you want to watch if you could, decide that?
Well, hold on, I gotta find some wood to knock on here. But yeah, my team is the Baltimore Ravens.
Uh-huh.
I've been a fan of them since high school. And who would I want to see them play against in the NFC? Oh man, that's a hard one. I don't have any specific hatred towards any specific team in the NFC. But I don't know. It might be interesting to see them play against one of the LA team, or I guess the only LA team in the NFC, which would be the Rams, because that's kind of my adopted home. So yeah, I think that might be interesting. But whoever the Ravens are playing, that's who my greatest enemy is. Whoever the Ravens are playing at the moment that they're playing them.
Right.
So
I mean, Baltimore's such a huge football town. I mean, you've watched the game there, right?
I have, yeah. My brother and I try to go back every year to either Philadelphia or Baltimore to see an NFL game.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really cool stadium. It's one that has just I mean, it's not like the SoFi Stadium, which is in LA, looks just amazing. It looks like science fiction, right? It's just so beautiful. But like the M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore has this like really classic look. It's got the red brick, and it just looks like it was, has been a part of the city forever. And it's such a cool place to see a game, and everybody. It's a really cool environment too. Like it's a great community of fans out there.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess this is probably I probably know the answer to this question, or at least maybe part of it. But if I gave you $1 million, what would you do with it?
Um, I would, that's tough. I'd pay off my car first. um, I would
Go to the Super Bowl, right?
go to the Super Bowl. Yeah, that would be one thing. I would probably put some money into Gabe Cheng Comics, the DBA that I self publish under. So make set aside some of that for some comic book investments. But honestly, like I think that I would use a lot of that money to, this sounds like a lie, but like I would use a lot of that money to help some of the people like in my life that have been very generous to me, like people like my best friend who has always been a day one backer on all of my Kickstarters. I would give him some of that to what put another level on his house or something, and or I would give it to my brother who's starting a tech company, who is again a day one backer on my Kickstarters. And, my sister who and her husband, who she is starting her own art art side business that she's doing on Instagram and Etsy. I'd give some of that to her, or my girlfriend, or has been a supporter of mine, and the list goes on and on of people that have just been there for me, especially in the last couple of years as I've been starting to really get into the indie comics community. I think that once I kind of dealt with a lot of the needs, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and dealt with a lot of those needs, and then get into the wants. The wants would be kind of paying back the generosity of a lot of my friends and family who have been supporting me the last couple of years.
Wow, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I haven't heard that since junior high. Self-actualization.
Yeah.
How about if I give you $100? What would you do with that?
Well, pizza, probably. Pizza and barbecue, probably. And then actually scratch that. I have a Kickstarter going on right now, so that's where it would go. I'll eat the pizza after the Kickstarter is over.
Nice. What kind of pizza joints would you recommend in LA?
The one that my girlfriend introduced to me on the east side, and I think it's technically in East Hollywood, is Desano's Pizza.
Uh-huh.
That's one that she really likes. There's one that's like down the street from me. I live in the valley. I live in the, like right on the Sherman Oaks Van Nuys Boulevard. It's called Napoli Pizza, which is a good, like, you always got to have like your one good neighborhood place, right?
Yeah.
So that's like my good neighborhood place. Like when people come over here, that's where I'll suggest getting delivery from. And then another place in the valley, which is a valley staple, is San Carlos, the Italian deli, which is up in Chatsworth. Which I just started a new job, and I'm meeting a lot of people, and I'm basically shadowing my manager, and I'm kind of his right hand man moving forward. So one of the things that was nice that we were immediately able to bond over on my first day was our mutual love of San Carlos Italian deli in Chatsworth, and the pizza and the bread and the cookies that they have there. So those are some good ones in the area.
Cool. I'll have to check those out next time I'm in LA. What's something new that you learned recently?
Okay. So this is actually kind of interesting, because I do trivia with my former coworkers at my last job, and and we just did it for the first time in like a year and a half, obviously, because we haven't been able to get together. So there's something. Hold on, I gotta quickly Google this. But there was a round on in trivia. In trivia that was all about social media. So it's specifically about social media questions. So I learned that the mascot, the little logo for Snapchat, which is an app that I don't use, is called Ghostface Chilla. Um, so I don't. That's to all of the people in your and all of your listeners that also do trivia and also might need to call upon that information when they are sitting in a bar and that comes up again. You're welcome. There you go.
Ghostface
Other
Killer.
than that, it's probably the most useless piece of information that's ever been shared on your podcast.
Oh my gosh. And my last question for the Thunder Round is your main character in Formali, Greg, is modeled after the actor John Cho. What are some
Mhm.
of your favorite John Cho movies?
Star Trek. I really like. I really like that confidence that he exudes as Sulu is so cool in that movie, and that's kind of the main reason why I was like, oh yeah, like this is who I want my main character to be modeled after. Um, I'm blanking on some of his other movies. I mean, I'm so excited about the live action Cowboy Bebop
Oh, me too.
that I'm kind of blanking on his other movies. I like because now all I can think of is that one little thing that they put out for their Netflix week, and you saw him and you saw Daniela Pineda and the guy who's playing Jet Black, like just in the chair, just doing like dancing around him. I was just so excited for that. I think he's going to be great as Spike. I
Yeah.
think it's going to be a great interpretation of that character.
Yeah, I remember watching him a long time ago in Better Luck Tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah, he's
Um,
really good in that movie.
Also, a more recent movie that I saw him in was Searching. Did you see that one?
No, no, I haven't. It looked like it was like a thriller, right? Like he's looking for his
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 daughter.
daughter.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was pretty good.
yeah, yeah. I should check that out. I mean, I think that it looks very harrowing and looks very um, I especially during the pandemic, I've been trying to like avoid things that were like really gonna like upset me, and kind of leaning more into funner things that are going to take my mind off of things that are going on in real life. So.
Uh huh. um, yeah, the next part of the podcast is superhero shoutouts. I mean, you already mentioned some names or some people earlier, but
Mhm.
are there other people or group of people that has helped you along the way that you'd like to say thank you to?
Yeah, definitely. I want to mention somebody who I've been talking to. I actually spoke to him this morning, but he's been kind of a Kickstarter therapist for me the last couple of weeks, and I've been freaking out about certain things and worrying about certain things, as you do when you're running a Kickstarter. But that's his name is Matt Knowles. He's the writer of he's one of the people behind Insymmetry Creations. He's the writer of writer co-creator of Heirs of Isildur, and his other book is Tales of Nocturnia. So he's a really great guy who's been really helping me out a lot this week. Um, Steve Prince, I also want to mention, and Charlie Stickney of Stout Comics, who is the writer of White Ash, were two people that I reached out to when I was having um, an issue that I needed some advice on the first day of my campaign, and I ran into a bit of a bump on the first day of the campaign, and the first two names that came to mind as far as Kickstarter expertise and just really great guys are Steve Prince and Charlie Stickney. So I really appreciate their help that they have given me already during this campaign.
Cool. Are there any other artists, writers, or other creatives that you'd like our audience to check out?
Um, yeah, I would say because I just got his comic, Jordan Thomas, my friend, he wrote Frank at Home on the Farm, which is available from Scout Comics, and his book Weird Work just came out on Kickstarter. I don't know if he's got that lined up with a publisher or not. Um, uh, the Nuclear Power book from Fanbase Press. I'm
Mm,
blanking on the name of the creators, the art and writer team, but it is really really cool. And the publisher, two people, married couple group, Bryant and Barbara Dillon, are just amazing people, just staples of the
yeah,
comics
they
community.
are
And
amazing. And
yeah,
if they happen to listen to this episode, I just want to reiterate that you guys are amazing.
yeah, yeah. So shout out to them. And uh, let me look at my Kickstarter who I've backed recently. Oh, two people. Yeah. One Simon Burks and Blue Fox Comics. He's doing a H.P. Lovecraft inspired Kickstarter right now called The Shadow over Innsmouth. I've never read any Lovecraft personally, so I'm excited to see his interpretation of it. I know that he is kind of aware of the controversy that surrounds Lovecraft and his personal views, and is kind of is avoiding those, and is maybe taking the good things out of it. Is what I think that he said. And then an artist that I've worked with in the past, whose name is Colleen Palmer, who did the variant cover on my book Into the Wilderness, who was just really cool, just edgy, gritty style, and that I absolutely love. Just did a book called Crow in the Eternal Night, and I'm really excited for that as well. Hopefully, she'll. That Kickstarter ended a couple of weeks ago, but hopefully she'll make that available to people, whether digitally or she'll get a publisher for it or something. But yeah, I'm excited for that book.
Awesome. Did we miss anything? Are there any other projects that you'd like to promote? What other projects have you been involved with that you'd like our audience to know about? I know you probably can't share too much about your parallel universe story, but I guess you can talk about your podcast, right?
Yeah, another lousy millennium, almpod.com, almpod on Twitter and Facebook. We are, if you are interested in Futurama at all, please drop in and listen to your favorite episodes, our analysis of your favorite episodes, and check it out and see if you like it or not. And if you like it, then we have talked about literally every episode. So the whole catalog is available to you, and we're doing what we're calling our victory lap right now, which is we're doing some episodes that are about our favorite. Well, we're listing our favorite villains. We're listing our favorite one-off characters, so characters that only appeared once. We're listing our favorite Holy Trinity episodes, and the Holy Trinity, Bender, Fry, and Leela. And that will all culminate in our podcast about where we list our favorite episodes and our favorite quotes from the series. So if you're at all interested in Futurama, please drop in and check it out, because like I said, the whole shebang is all done. And yeah, I'll save the parallel universe talk for hopefully the next time I'm on the Hall H show. But yeah, please check out For Molly on Kickstarter.
Since this podcast focused on Futurama will be coming to a close, do you have plans for another podcast on another show?
We do. For the moment, we haven't announced a lot of that yet,
okay.
But I can say that it's still going to focus on animation. It's still going to focus on TV, but it's going to be a little bit more TV agnostic. So we're not going to focus on one show for a number of years like we did with Futurama. So we'll be jumping around a little bit more. So if you enjoy listening to our analysis of Futurama, we're going to try to continue that on with other shows in our next podcast.
Cool. And where can people find you online?
At Gabe Cheng Comics on Instagram and Twitter, at For Molly Comic on Facebook, and GabeChengComics.com.
Awesome. And before I let you go, I usually like to close out the show with a few pieces of advice. You made a switch from being a teacher to a writer. What kind of advice can you give to someone that is struggling to give their creative side a chance to flourish, but is still working a full-time job in a traditional career to make ends meet?
Oh man, that's a good question. I would say that the first thing is to go for it. Which is hopefully something that somebody like that is hearing. Don't just think about don't just think about oh yeah, if I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it. Just go for it. And something that I think about a lot. Like I said, I'm a slow writer, so I have a little voice in my head that's just like, come on, man, just crap out a really bad first draft. Let's just get this done, and then we'll fix it later. Fix it in post. But yeah, just getting something done is the first part of it. And another thing that I think about a lot, especially during Kickstarters, is and it's going to sound kind of negative, and I don't want it to sound negative, but it's something that I think about a lot, which is I'll spin it to being positive. It's nobody's going to do this for me, but I can't do it alone. So it is the duality of doing something in the indie creator space of you absolutely cannot do it alone. I need people to contribute to the Kickstarter. I need people to invite me onto their podcast. I need people to shout me out on social media. I need people to give me advice. I need people to look at my campaign page before I launch. I need people, but nobody is going to do it for me. That I have to do it myself. That nobody is going to be the person to sit down in front of my computer and create the graphics for the page. Nobody except me can write the story, can write the script. Nobody except me can stand in front of, can set up lights in my apartment at 11 o'clock at night because that's the only time I have available and shoot the Kickstarter video, that all that hard stuff. Like I have to do it myself. But at the same time, I can't do it in a bubble. I need other people to do it. So I think that that's one of the things to think about if you're becoming a creator is that you are joining a community. And hopefully the local community around you is going to be as supportive as the people that I've met in the Southern California community and adjacent. Because I'm extremely lucky to have met, Barbara and Brian Dillon and Charlie Stickney and Steve Prince and all these other people and all these other people that I speak to remotely, like my friend Eric Borden, who does a great book called Lead City and Scrimshaw and of course Ben, who's in St. Louis, just like you can't do it without other people. So be aware that you are joining a community and be ready to contribute to that community, even if it's just with smiles and I was going to say handshakes, but now I guess it'd be fist bumps,
Right.
but like just general positivity. Just be ready to contribute with something, that isn't toxicity, that isn't negativity, that isn't just like, oh, I can't believe somebody else is more successful than me, blah, blah, blah. Be ready to lift other people up because a rising tide lifts all boats. And that's, like I've been saying, since we started, it's one of the great things about this decision that I made to do indie comics is that I just, I love the medium. So I love that part of it where it's like, I can create it. It's the only I can create it because it's my story that I want to tell. If somebody else is creating it, then it's not my story, or somebody else is writing it because obviously somebody else is creating the art for me. But then like being a part of this community, working with incredible artists, collaborating with, and, having it be a conversation and not just me like yelling edicts at Elisa or Ben. I don't know. It's just, it's now I've kind of lost my train of thought, but just be prepared to bring something to it. And hopefully you are surrounded by other people that are being positive and being generous and being helpful as well. And if you're not surrounded by those people, then stop hanging out with those people and find somebody,
Right.
find somebody better.
And I guess to add on that, also it's important to sort of pay it forward once you receive all that information and help.
100%. Like, so as much as I am out there asking people for help, if somebody asks me for help, then it's my obligation to at least give them what advice I have available, or at least connect them with somebody that can help them or something like that, because I've been receiving so much that you also have to give.
Yeah, I think my friend Ryland Grant, he has this thing that he says where he takes it upon himself to hold that door open and get as many people that he knows through that door.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's true, because there's that old adage in Hollywood where it's like, as soon as one person goes through, or as soon as one person gets into the industry, the door closes behind them, because that's it's hard to replicate exactly what somebody does to get into the industry. So yeah, Ryland is another great guy who I've met during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's awesome peeps for sure. Gabe, thank you so much for sharing your time with me today to do this podcast. It's been a pleasure getting to know you, and I look forward to meeting you in person, and maybe we can share pizza one day.
Always. Yeah. Thank you for having me. This has been a real pleasure. And I really appreciate you having me on. I mean, like I said, it's, any bit helps, and this has been a huge help. So thank you so much.
No, you're very welcome. Thank you for listening to the Hall H Show podcast, and thanks to my guest, Gabe Cheng. Please give him a follow and consider supporting his comic book, For Molly, which is available to back on Kickstarter until Friday, August 6th, 2021. As you know, we love putting the spotlight on independent pop culture creatives like Gabe. If you have a suggestion for a potential guest, please let us know by reaching out to us on social media or by filling out our contact form on our website, hallh.com. If you believe in our mission to be the voice of independent creators, we would appreciate a rating, hopefully 5 stars, and a comment on Apple Podcasts. And please spread the word on social media using the hashtag HallHShow. Peace, cheers, and stay safe out there.